All our presenters are now muted, so you may want to unmute yourselves. So just to confirm, we are recording this session. It will be available on the Working in Mortgages website later this week. If you aren't comfortable with being recorded, then if you can leave the call at this point and you'll be able to watch it back later on in the week, but otherwise you are given your permission to be recorded. So this is part of the Lunch and Learn sessions of the Working in Mortgages initiative. And today's session, your presenters are Ali, Jason and Esther, with Sabrina, I think, supporting as well. We have said, where possible, get out and walk while you're listening to this session, make it really positive. So I'm actually going to log off in a second and go and walk and listen. So you may see me hopefully at the end, but enjoy the session and I'll hand over to you, Ali.
Thank you, Gemma. So welcome today. We're delighted to see so many people join us. If this is your first time, we are running the first one of 2026 today, and we've coincided it with Blue Monday or Brew Monday, which I'll tell you more about in a minute, as our first Lunch and Learn. So as Gemma said, we're encouraging everybody that can listen while walking to do so, just because it's such a great activity. And I live out in Essex and it's currently dry, so hopefully it is where you are in the country as well, so that you can kind of take your dog and take the opportunity to get some fresh air, as we are. And we've got some of our team walking today. So Gemma, Kat, Caroline, Zoe, Atlin, if you're on, give us a wave, because I know that we've got some walkers that have taken the opportunity to do so, and I'm sure your pets will also be happy that they're taking the walk as well. So we have limited slides, so that it is possible to just listen in. So feel free, as Gemma said, to go off camera, grab some headphones and start to take the walk. Traditionally, today is known as the most depressing day of the year, but we're going to shine a light on mental health today and share some great tips to take forward into 2026 and beyond. And whether that's for yourself or sharing it with your colleagues and family, then I'm really delighted to have some great presenters today to talk through our topic that's really important to us. You may have heard it called Brew Monday, and that's because the Samaritans named it that to encourage us all to have a cuppa and a chat. So if you've also got your tea while you're walking, you're ticking all the right boxes today, guys, to try and encourage some positive actions as we go into 2026. So without any further ado, I wanted to welcome Jason Berry from MIMHC and Crystal Life, and Esther Barnes, who's an experienced mortgage advisor from the Independent Mortgage Experts and a trained hypnotherapist, onto the call today. So over to you guys. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Alison. Thanks.
Oh, Jason, you might have been muted.
I think it's put you on mute for some reason. Sorry.
There we go. There we go. There we go. Joys of technology. Listen, hello everyone and welcome. Thanks for joining us today in brilliant numbers. As you've just heard from Alison there, my name's Jason Berry. I'm co-founder of the Mortgage Industry Mental Health Charter and also Group Sales Director at Crystal Specialist Finance. I've been blessed to work in this sector for over 30 years now, and I'm passionate about two things, bringing new talent in and looking after the talent that's already in there. So I'd really like to thank the Working in Mortgages team for having us and putting things together today. And as I say, just a genuine thank you to all of you for making time for what is a difficult topic, particularly on a day like today. And it's a topic that usually gets put to the bottom of people's list. I'm certainly loving seeing those out there who are actually walking and talking, which is great. Physical movement is such an important aspect to well-being. So on today's theme, as you've heard, this Blue Brew Monday day is a significant one, for a lot of wrong reasons. And I want you to be assured, the conversation today is not about demonstrating we're tough enough. It's not about talking about how resilient we are. It's not performance review, so there's no statistics we'll be running through. It really is just a chance to pause, reflect, and check on how we're really doing. And crucially, I'll introduce Esther in a moment, but just to share some hints, tips, ideas. We've also got a real mixed audience today, which is brilliant. So we've got brokers, admin people, BDMs, underwriters, HR, some leadership. I can see some business owners in the audience, which is great. And we've got operations people. And for me, that's ideal because pressure shows up irrespective of role and irrespective of responsibility. So just a few ground rules before I get into some nitty gritty. So you don't have to share anything personal today. You can just listen and take in what helps. And yeah, I promise you're going to enjoy some of the exercises that we run through in a little while. If you need to step away, please do so. Camera off is absolutely fine. So we don't need to see everybody's faces. And if we do bring up anything, that's maybe a little bit personal, please, take some time to turn the camera off, as I've said, and we'll make sure that there's some signposting for support at the end of the session. And the goal today is pretty simple. So we want to help people feel seen. We want to share what some data has actually showed us about what's going on in the industry, particularly around burnout. And we want to deliver some practical tools that you can consider using, and that's going to be the crucial thing. So when I reflect back at the end and we look back on maybe some of the great content that you'd have listened to, actually taking action on the back of today is a real purpose and a real objective for me. So just a little context on why MIMHC exists, really, and you can see our mission statement if Sabrina can put that on the slide. And ultimately, look, back in 2021, as I said, I've been involved in this marketplace for a long time. Just after COVID, I think what we could see from internally from our own crystal business, was also absolutely evident in that wider marketplace. So seeing isolation and seeing brilliant sales structures, seeing brilliant compliance structures, service standard performance, and KPIs and metrics and all kinds of tables was absolutely embedded in many businesses, but very few had structures in place that were specifically around mental health and well-being. And that very first survey we actually did back in 2021, it actually showed from the respondents, and each year we do a survey, we get around about 500 respondents, and it stayed pretty similar as we've gone through each year. But what it showed us was that from the respondents, 32% of them said that their business, their company, had some sort of mental health and well-being framework in place. And so driving that and improving that has been a real core objective as I've gone through the last 4 years with the other co-founders. And I'm pleased to say, we last year, 2025, we were up to about 70%, but we're not even at first base. So more to come on statistics in a moment, but ultimately we're all affected. We're on this emotional roller coaster in a mortgage environment. We're affected by deadlines. We're affected by regulation. We're affected by the responsibility that sits with clients, and we're also going to get the odd little market shock. So whether it's swap rates changing, products being pulled, we're victims of circumstance at times, but this feeling of always being on and the immediacy of dealing with things here and now is something that we've certainly got to do something about. So as we've gone through the MIMHC journey, I think there's been three things to really try and raise awareness on. Sabrina, can you just bring up that next slide, which just shows the journey for us. So this just gives you a bit of a flavour as to obviously setting up in 2021, and then what we've done as we've gone through the last 4 years. So if you just press the buttons again for me, Sabrina, just to show the journey we've been on. So we've got over 300 signatories now. We touch over 25,000 individuals. It's totally free to become a signatory. And ultimately, sliding doors moment has been us becoming a foundation in our own right, which means we can now raise money and put 100% of it, not for profit, back into the sector and the marketplace. So coming into this 2026 year, we moved from raising awareness, which is still important, into a focus which is on all about meaningful action, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. But three key focus areas for us: so raising awareness, so making it okay to talk about difficult topics, making it okay to try and remove some of the stigma associated with mental health and well-being. I think gathering data, I've mentioned the survey, so being able to have a temperature check every year and see, are we progressing? And look, I make no apologies, I've been a sales and marketing person for the majority of my working life. I'm focused on targets, and I know that if I look at leading up to Christmas, I'll keep eating until I explode, knowing that in the new year I've got a walking event in May during Mental Health Week that forces me to get fit. So I respond to targets and objectives, and I think having a meaningful survey that can deliver that temperature check, it's so important. And I'm just really chuffed and pleased that we've now got over 4 years worth of data. We're just going to continue doing that. But I think, you know, this part about moving from awareness to delivering, you know, practical frameworks, so, you know, firms can support and, you know, deliver the right kind of support from a supervising managerial level is, you know, is really, really important. So this transition into becoming a foundation means, yeah, as I said, funds raised can go back into, yeah, structured support, and, you know, we're a not-for-profit. It means I can have more formal partnerships and, you know, deliver a long-term approach. So this is all about sustainability. So you've seen in that mission statement, we want to build a community, and, you know, a community which encourages talking, a community that encourages, you know, the well-being of others. There's no downside, right? It's, you know, it's clearly a positive. I think just touch on a few stats with you in terms of the survey before I introduce Esther. So, you know, the survey findings as we go through each year, you know, they're not particularly rocket science, if I'm honest with you. And again, you know, where we expect to see yeah, I suppose poor statistics, we see year on year. So even if there's marginal change, it still doesn't take away the fact that we've got, you know, we do have some challenges. And as I said, we've not even got started with what we're trying to achieve here. But, you know, just when we look at some of the stats, I'll start with the sleep and recovery. So, and this is, you know, startling really. So sleep and recovery, more people, you can go to the next slide, please, Sabrina. Sleep and recovery, more people not getting the minimum 7 hours needed. So, you know, the requested, or the minimum sleep that people should be getting is between 7 and 9 hours. We've got 1 in 5, more than 1 in 5 actually, of our respondents. So, you know, more than 100 plus of the 500 were, you know, were indicating that they never, on one of the 7 nights, never get that minimum 7 hours sleep. And, you know, sleep and everything associated with sleep in terms of, you know, looking after yourself and, you know, the ability to serve others starts with being able to look after ourselves. And if we're not getting, if we're not getting enough sleep, then, you know, it's clearly going to affect, you know, us on a daily basis. I think the working hours and the workload, you know, guess what? We're operating a sector where each year we're working harder and longer. So, you know, there's no shortcuts. And, you know, ultimately, I think, you know, what is most worrying when I listen to or I observe this, the anecdotal comments which accompany the statistics, and where, you know, we've got, I think, just over 20% of people working more than 60 hours per week, and that's just a standstill. So, yeah, I mentioned burnout before, and I mentioned, you know, the risks of burnout, not enough sleep, working longer hours, and, you know, we've got a recipe of disaster if we're not careful. So we've got to do something about it, and it starts with attending conversations like this. So, as I say, this is why I'm really grateful. The emotional state, and, you know, just continuing that kind of theme is, you know, we've got more people feeling, you know, less happy or only moderately happy working in our environment. And I've mentioned, you know, look, I'm passionate about people getting advice, so that's the why for me. So why I operate in this sector, and I've been humbled and chuffed to operate in this sector for so many years, is because I want people getting advice. So irrespective of AI, irrespective of technology, people need to make informed decisions, and I'm motivated to ensure that you know, advice and conversation, yeah, continues. But we've got less people happy working in the environment. So, you know, making sure people are having right conversations when, and they're feeling good when they're in our sector is one thing, as well as attracting new talent. But we ain't going to attract new talent if the people operating in the sector are miserable and not enjoying it. So we've got to do something about it. So most worrying to me is actually the fact that we've got 22% of our survey response indicating that the mental health is poor or of concern. So, you know, we've got a UK population which operates at about 10%. So about 10% of the UK population, you know, would indicate that their mental health and well-being is poor or of concern. In our sector, we're operating at double that. So, yeah, over 250, it's about 270 of the 500 respondents indicated that their mental health is poor or of concern. That is a problem. So we've got to do something about it, as I've said. So put simply, you know, a lot of people are just running so close to burnout, and they've been doing it for a long time. And guess what? When you operate in that burnout stage for for long enough, your body's going to give in, right? So again, hints, tips, coping mechanisms. It's so crucial we understand and we embrace. So again, when I bring Esther on in a minute, it's so useful and so important that we embrace the exercises. And Esther, for me, sits in a rare sweet spot because she understands what we do. So the mortgage pressures from the inside, as well as being a clinically trained professional who can help people manage stress, anxiety, burnout and behaviour change. She's also a successful mortgage and protection advisor. So she knows what the pressure's like of completion deadlines, clients having barriers put in the way as we go through the processing problem, and that constant problem solving that quite often we have to do, whether it's in that admin or whether it's in that face-to-face sales kind of situation. So qualified hypnotherapist, works specifically with people around anxiety, stress, addiction, burnout and habit change. And as I said, I just love the fact that she can bridge the both worlds, so mortgage reality and the science of what prolonged stress can do to us. So enough of me and my statistics, and let's move on to to Esther. So Esther, I'm really grateful and thankful for joining us today. And again, I know we've got such a big number here, and they're not joining just to see my Christmas jumper. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. But probably a good starting point is maybe just give people a bit of a background of your journey into mortgages, and then maybe that segue into your mental health and the connection that exists with that mental health and the professional side you look at there. So a bit of your journey, and then how come we've got this mental health connection as well.
Yeah, of course. So first of all, thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. Thanks for the invite. So first things first, I think, so I've been an experienced independent mortgage advisor for 20 plus years as an employee, but since 2015 as a self-employed, running my own business and working from home. So in terms of the hypnotherapy, the interest in mental health, I just wanted to do something different to my day job, helping people in another way. And an opportunity actually appeared in 2016 to train as a hypnotherapist. So I found it so interesting. So I thought I'll jump on that and jump at the chance to learn more about the human mind and its power, and how it can influence our daily lives, basically. So initially it was something to help family and friends, but then it became kind of like a sideline business, really. So I've also helped the general public overcome all sorts of issues. So this is kind of things like phobias, fear of flying, to weight loss, increasing confidence and motivation. So although it's at the moment not a main business of mine per se, I really use it for myself, but also friends and family. So I guess for me personally, it's massively helped to overcome all sorts of mental barriers for me throughout my career. So from anxiety through, for networking, for example, to managing stress and increasing confidence and avoiding burnout, basically.
And on that burnout point, I mean, what typically do you see as like the symptoms? So obviously I mentioned some statistics there and the way our respondents were actually feeling when they completed the survey, but what are typical kind of symptoms, so that maybe run beyond the not enough sleep and working longer hours?
So I think mainly in the industry. So from my experience as a mortgage broker, I'd say for me it was working very long hours, working at weekends, not being able to switch off. A lot of the things you've already mentioned, to be honest. So not being able to switch off, so it has a knock-on effect with like my quality of sleep. So lots of broken sleep, mind racing at night. And then that has a knock-on effect of feeling exhausted all the time, which can then affect your relationships in terms of being more irritable with people, and in your day job as well, when you're on the phone to lenders, etc. And so, you're just not having a good time, and therefore you just don't feel like you want to socialize. So you might withdraw yourself from social engagement. So it's that isolation is feeling more isolated, I think, as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting actually, because again with the survey, I think what is interesting, and I spoke briefly around people in our sector actually only maybe being moderately happy, or not feeling happy in the environment, and that's against the backdrop of more people working from home, either hybrid or permanently. I think again from the respondents of the 500, it was 85% of the respondents were actually working from home. And maybe pre-COVID, maybe the panacea that everybody wanted was this idea of that flexible working or working permanently from home, but it's not necessarily delivered the result and the outcome we'd maybe expect from a mental health and wellbeing perspective, has it?
No, yeah, absolutely. So I think it's just important, like you said before, being aware of those signs and then jumping on it rather than burying it, which is so easy because you get into habits, and habits are quite difficult to break. So it's just first of all being aware of it and then knowing what to do about it.
Yeah, so that exhaustion, that constant feeling of fatigue, that withdrawing, and maybe cut yourself off from others, and obviously the importance of conversation. Always run with the strap line, keep the conversation going. But that constant, there's a constant need for conversation and not bottling stuff up, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So it's just people knowing where to go. I think that's the thing as well. It's like if you're aware of these signs, what do you do? Where can you go? And so this is what obviously that we're trying to create this awareness of people's options.
And what about, so before we get down to the exercises, which I'm dead excited about, and I know as long as people are not closing their eyes and walking into lampposts, we'll be okay. But just the coping mechanisms. So before we talk about the exercises, just what are some coping strategies that maybe people can consider? So outside of the exercises, which we'll do in a minute, just coping strategies. What would be your go-to, maybe top 5, top 3, top 5?
So I think the biggest thing, so coming from busy professionals, the diary's full and they feel like they can't really commit much time, I'd say, just committing like 5 minutes a day, say for example 3 times a day, looking at the diary, seeing where they can cut back on tasks that aren't really moving them forward, or if you're being very reactive with clients, can you be more proactive? Can you cut out some time in your diary for 5 minutes to do some, for example, like mindfulness techniques or breathing techniques? I'm going to go through like a technique today, which is really good. It's really easy to use, called emotional freedom technique. And you can do these in between calls. So if you get a stressful call with a client or a lender, you can do it before the call or after the call, before appointments or anything that you feel quite like anxious or stressed about. So if you're going to do a networking event or something that you feel quite nervous about, you can do that just beforehand. So I'd say that's one of the things. The other obvious things are stuff like, getting out in nature more. So, for example, as people are doing now, walking outside for like 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, just getting outside, getting some fresh air. That has a huge impact, particularly over the medium to long term. So it's just been kind of looking at it as a bird's eye view of where what your lifestyle is, basically, and looking at areas that you can improve a little bit. It doesn't have to be a massive change, because obviously that people can find that overwhelming. It's looking at small changes, but doing it consistently. That's the key, consistency. So if you find that blocking out 5 minutes a day will help, block it out and give it priority, like it's a client meeting, for example. They're the things I would start with.
I'm not sure if Jason's just dropped off with so many participants, but that's all right. I can keep going. I've got a question on that then, Esther. So in our world, as a BDM, we find that we go out to brokers and they expect us to be kind of, sitting in the office, and that kind of interaction has to be at the desk. But I found some of the best interactions is actually just like taking them out and walking during the meeting. So that sounds exactly like what you're describing there, is taking that opportunity to to get some fresh air
Yeah.
and also build your knowledge and what you want to cover, but in a way that's covering both aspects. And when you are away from the desk, I do find that's when the best conversations happen.
Absolutely. Yeah, because people are more relaxed, aren't they? I think sometimes when you sat at your desk or you sat in an office, it gives that kind of like, it's not a relaxed, well, it could be, but generally you're very much at work. So when you're out and about, you're just a lot more relaxed, and a lot more open as well.
Yeah. So while we're waiting for Jason to come back on, would you like to share one of your practical exercises that you've kept us lingering on? Because I'm really interested to hear about this. So what can we do? And obviously be careful if you're walking, don't shut your eyes.
Yes, don't shut your eyes.
Yeah, fill us in.
So I just thought today, because obviously there's lots of tools and techniques out there that can help, but the one thing I thought I'd focus on is something called, and people may or may not have heard of this, it's called EFT, which is short for Emotional Freedom Technique, or it's also known as tapping. So the benefit of this is that you can do it anywhere. You don't have to have your eyes closed. You don't need to go into a hypnosis trance. It's basically just an alternative treatment for physical pain. It also can help with all sorts of things, not just stress and anxiety, but physical pain and emotional distress. So all it does, it involves gently tapping on certain meridian points of the face and body while tuning into an issue, like feeling stressed, for example. So it draws on the traditional Chinese medicine practice of acupuncture. So people have been using acupoints to treat all sorts of issues for thousands of years. So it's not actually a new concept. And the theory is by tapping on these points, it balances the energy system in the body and helps to release stagnant emotions that are stuck in the body. So basically you tap through these different points, and I'll show you in a bit where to tap, and while saying a particular statement, and then tuning into a feeling at the time. So like I said before, it doesn't take much time to learn or use. And you can use it anywhere, out and about, while you're walking or sat at your desk. And quite often the results are immediate. So where you can use this, as I've already mentioned, you probably could use it after a stressful call with a lender, in between client appointments, at the beginning of a day or the end of a day. Any time where you feel like you're highly stressed. Essentially, it helps to regulate your nervous system and reduce that feeling. So that's what it is. So I don't know if you've got a slide to show where the points are, because sometimes people find it easier to see where the points are. I don't know if that's possible. If not, I can just run through it verbally.
No, I think if you can verbally cover it, because they might be out walking, that'd be perfect.
Of course, yeah, no problem. So basically, the main tapping points are, so you always start at the side of your hand here. So with your four fingers and just tapping gently at the side of your hand. So and this is where you always start. You can either do it two fingers or four fingers, that's fine. So that's the first point. So if you're ever feeling quite anxious, just keep tapping and focusing on the feeling. So the other points are, and I'll just take my glasses off for this, although I can't read. So it's the eyebrow here. So use a couple of fingers to tap the inner edges of the eyebrows close to the bridge of the nose, and then the side of the eye here. Again, two fingers to tap on the hard ridge between the corner of your eye and your temple. So be careful and obviously gentle, because these can be quite sensitive areas. Under the eye, staying in line with your pupil. So use the couple of fingers on the hard bone under the eye that merges with the cheekbone. Under the nose. And then the chin. And then the collarbone. So you can either just tap one collarbone. So it's just below the hard ridge of your collarbone with four fingers, just there. And they usually say to tap between 5 and 7 times. And then under the arm, 4 fingers to tap on the side, just about 4 inches beneath the armpit. And then you're probably going to laugh here, but this is actually a point. Maybe not do it in public. Top of the head. So again, use 4 fingers to tap on the crown of your head. So they're the main points of the tapping points. So like I said before, this can help release kind of emotions, trapped emotions, stress. So for the sake of this demonstration, it's just a simple routine addressing a general stress, okay? So, so what you need to do first of all is assess how you feel. So always start with how you feel. And if it's helpful, when you can write down your feelings in a sentence or two, or just simply bring them to the focus of your attention. And just take a moment to figure out exactly what it is that you're stressed out about. So, for example, you know, if you've got a stressful, you know, quite a big a workload on, or you need to speak to a lender about a decision, for example. Just identify that. But if you obviously don't know what it is, it's okay not to be, you know, certain. Just simply knowing that you're feeling some stress is good enough. So the next bit would be to just, you know, how intense is this stress? So rate your stress on a scale from 0 to 10, with 0 being the lowest level of stress and 10 being the highest. So just get that number in your mind. And now you're going to use your feelings to compose like a setup statement. So this is simply an acknowledgement of the fact that you're feeling stressed out. So followed by utter acceptance and compassion for yourself in spite of this fact. Okay, so for example, you would say, you know, even though I'm feeling, so you could tap on the side of your hand so you can just follow me, and just repeat after me, but obviously out loud, or probably best in your mind. Even though I'm feeling so stressed out about my job and my workload, I accept that's how I feel. Another example would be, you know, even though I'm so stressed out, I have no idea why that is. I'm learning to accept myself. So, so they're the basic setup statements, okay? So the next thing, so what I want you to do then is just follow me, and we're going to tap round. So what I would say is try and do a loop of about 3 times. Okay, so say the setup statement 3 times, and then start tapping around the points 3 times. Okay, so so here we go. So just follow me and say these after me, in your own mind. So again, start tapping on the side of the hand. So even though my stress is at an all-time high because of my workload, I deeply and completely accept myself. And again, even though my stress is at an all-time high because of my workload, I deeply and completely accept myself. And then the last one, even though my stress is at an all-time high because of my workload, I deeply and completely accept myself. And then just start going through the points. So again, on the eyebrow, I'm so stressed out. And then on the side of the eye, I can't take it anymore. And then under the eye, it's just too much for me to handle. And then under the nose, it's making everything such a mess. Under the chin, I just can't focus on anything. Collarbone, I'm so tired and anxious. Under the arm, I just want this stress to go away. At the top of the head, I just want to relax. Okay, and then you do another round. Okay, so again, just follow me. Why do I have to be so stressed out? On the side of the eye, I just can't cope anymore. Under the eye, something has to give. Under the nose, I can't spend every day like this stressed out. Under the chin, it's just too much for me to deal with. Collarbone, I just can't handle the stress right now. And under the arm, I feel so burdened. And at the top of the head, I feel so much pressure. And then take a really deep breath in. and then let it go out the mouth, and then rate how you feel. So how are you feeling now? Has the intensity of the feeling reduced at all? So rate your current stress level on, again, in a scale of 0 to 10, and compare it to how you were feeling before. So if your stress is still higher than a 2, you should probably do another round of tapping. Ideally, you want to keep the tapping until your stress is completely gone, at 0. So you might find that other thoughts and insights about your stress pop up. So, if any other realizations come up, then you can do the round again, and then maybe change the setup statement. So, for example, if you're stressed out about a lender's decision, it could be that you don't want to let the client down. So then you go round again. So even though, I now have a better understanding of why I'm so stressed, I deeply, completely accept myself, and do that again. So that's it for tapping. It's really simple, but it's so effective. So how do you find that?
I mean, if people don't mind me going first, obviously, when my internet dropped out there, I went from a nice, comfortable 2 to 3 to about a 12 out of 10. I've got such a reliable internet, so I'm now back at a 2. So thank you. I didn't realise tapping would have such a positive impact and be so effective. And with the tapping then, so is it something that you regularly see as making a difference? Because I genuinely do feel less stress, not just because my internet's back on, but just having done the tapping.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been all sorts of studies around the tapping that shows that it makes a difference. So it's been obviously thoroughly studied. It has had really positive results back. So but personally, I use it, and it just makes me feel like I can cope. With going into situations where I might be a bit nervous or anxious, but it's not only that, it can help with other things like actual physical pain. It's shown, the studies have shown to actually help with physical pain, to reduce that pain. So it's a tool for all sorts of things. So I just think, as a practical thing, perhaps if you just want to give it a try, maybe do some research on it. I'm thinking about doing a workshop as well at some point in the future, potentially. But just do some research on it, and then just fit it in your day, maybe 5 minutes, or even if it's not the tapping, it's like the breathing as well. There's lots of breathing techniques that have a massive impact on bringing your nervous, regulating your nervous system. So that's worth a try as well.
I love that, and obviously we can see in the chat there, we can see the tapping points, which are there for everybody to actually see. And what about the positive affirmation of language then? So whilst you're actually delivering the tapping, or as you're going through that process, obviously saying positive things to yourself during a process, I found can help. What about like the positive language in a part that can play?
Yeah, so obviously the actual tapping rounds, you are acknowledging, it's about acknowledging acceptance. Yeah. So it's acknowledging how you feel. It's bringing it out of the body, because, a lot of it is stored in the body, and which can cause issues if it's not dealt with, over the long term. It's bringing that out of the body. It's acknowledging it, and bringing awareness, shining a light on it. And then the statement, the very last bit, I completely accept myself. Completely love and accept myself. Sometimes people might think, oh, that sounds a bit, because
I love it.
But it's kind of like acceptance. It's like, I feel this way, but it's okay. And I can deal with it. So
again, I know when I know it's not about me, but I know that there's a guilt that can be associated with causing that causes the anxiety and stress. Yes. I know in the past, look, I've not always practiced what I preach, but going to a parents' evening, or doing something through the day that was maybe family connected, I used to feel guilty, which was absolutely bonkers. And I think this positive language and that affirmation as you deliver that tapping, I think is great. But just remove some of this guilt. And what I keep preaching at the moment, if that's probably the wrong choice of word there, but I think work-life integration rather than work-life balance. The sector we operate in, Esther, we know we're going to be busy, we know we're going to have bumps in the road, and this idea of having a work-life balance, which where it's this utopia. It's really difficult, but work-life integration is something that's very, very different, isn't it? And finding time to do these brilliant exercises and these coping mechanisms through the day. Before I got cut off, I was going to talk about boundary setting and just having the discipline to diarise and put in your calendar. Okay, I'm going to spend 30 minutes doing these various exercises which help me feel good. We shouldn't feel guilty about it, should we? We should have get the boundaries right in our daily working life, shouldn't we?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's just about in a way putting yourself first as well, because obviously if you don't, then that's when things start to fall down. So it's just looking at like spaces in your diary that you can block out time, and you don't need to start off with like half an hour to an hour. You can just start off at 5 minutes, because everybody can find 5 minutes 3 times a day in the diary, and just doing it for 5 minutes. But then once that becomes a habit, maybe doing that for a certain amount of time. I think it's 30, or somebody told me 66 days to create a habit. Do that for that length, that becomes a habit, and then build on it. Make it 10 minutes a day, and then build on that. But what definitely helped me in terms of boundaries is looking at my diary from a bird's eye point of view and thinking, right, what tasks are not important? What tasks, where am I wasting my time? And then identifying that and maybe cutting down on that, for example, and then you can slot this in. So there's just a couple of things to help there.
Love it. And look, I'm dead conscious of time, because I want to make sure that people get the opportunity to ask you some questions. So look, I think you touched on it there. The important bit for me here is that power of repetition. So having exercises that are our go-to exercises are one thing, but being able to do them, as we've just been talking about there, with a level of regularity, so it becomes a habit, is absolutely the crucial thing. I think just before we go on to the questions, as I said, look, I indicated today is a particularly poignant one, and sometimes I've gone through this this MIMHC process, and I felt like a bit of an imposter at times, because look, I'm a pragmatic, positive salesperson who has never had suicidal thoughts, or I felt low when I've had different events, but ultimately I've never been as low. But that doesn't mean I've not had and been affected by those around me. So this day is a really difficult day, and in my role at Amy, I'm really chuffed and blessed to work with a real talented team. And I know one of the people within that team is Sabrina, and I know this day is a particularly poignant one for you, isn't it, Sabrina? So if I can bring you in and look at it, I know we've got as I said, today wasn't about making people feel uncomfortable, but it is a day of the year where we need a bit of a reality check, and we'll come back to the exercises and some habits that we can get, and some Q&A questions in a moment. But Sabrina, could you just outline this? You've got a personal story, haven't you, which is particularly poignant on today.
Yeah, of course. And just like you said, Jason, I'm not sharing out of, I don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable. The whole thought process behind today is essentially just, a problem shared is a problem halved. So I'd just like to think that maybe my story resonates with people on the call. And, if you ever feel like you do need to reach out to someone to talk about things, then this could be your motivation to do it. Basically, I had a great friend that I'd met through a previous work role. I think we met around 2017, 2018. So we'd only been friends for a couple of years, but he was one of the kindest, funniest, empathetic people I'd ever met. But unfortunately, on Blue Monday in 2020, I got the terrible phone call to say that he'd actually committed suicide. And then, that was a whirlwind in itself. So dealing with that, the grief, the loss, it was one of the biggest kind of bereavements I'd ever had in my life. I was only 28 at the time. And then 10 days later, one of his parents actually did the same.
Oh, wow.
And this was just before COVID as well. So you can imagine how I dealt with that. Wasn't great. But I think with age and with the years as it passes, the one thing that I really struggled with at the beginning was a sense of guilt. Like, if I'd done this differently, if I'd said this differently, would he still be here today? And it's a form of self-torture. But the last couple of years, I've really come to accept that nothing could have changed it. Like, especially nothing that I could have done. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's gave me such a way of peace, of living with it, and just understanding that it was not your fault. It's no one's fault. You know, it is unfortunately just one of those things. But, you know, Samaritans were great with them. Mind were great. It was just unfortunate that it ended the way it did.
I think, look, thanks, Sabrina, for sharing it. And look, everybody, as I've touched on, has got their own kind of backstory. I've seen and observed that more and more over the last 4 years. And again, just that importance of conversation and not bottling things up is
100%.
Is easier said than done in terms of when people are struggling. But thank you so much for sharing that. And Esther, so I'd encourage people to if you've got any questions you'd like to ask Esther, then please put them down in the chat box, and I'll try and pick them up. But just building on from Sabrina and the tragic story there. Conversation and the importance of conversation, so people don't bottle things up. It's, as I said, it's easier said than done, isn't it? And again, I think when it comes to if I reflect back to the survey, I think respondents are absolutely they're really craving supervisor, management, and leadership to listen to the stories. And how would you go about if you've got a particularly difficult you're having a particularly difficult time at the moment, how would you go about approaching your boss to actually get things on the table? Oh, can you hear me, Esther? Is Esther on mute?
Oh, sorry, was that me? Sorry.
Sorry.
Repeat that.
So if somebody is particularly having a difficult time at the moment and maybe bottling things up, I suppose I'm just interested in what approach do you think they could have with the line manager or the business leader, their boss? How do they best try and tackle so they can be honest and talk about what's troubling them?
I would say it's creating that, like I said before, that awareness to help like staff to recognise the signs, because I think it's not knowing the signs, but also creating some space in the day as well that people can feel comfortable going to the managers to talk about it. So it's just breaking down those barriers, I suppose. And just having maybe like, the thing that comes to my mind is perhaps having like set days in the week where people can feel comfortable saying how they feel, or perhaps checking in, is reminding people to check in regular times of the day. How are they feeling? So that's the first thing I would say.
And maybe I can just slightly pivot in a question. So it's how you feeling on a scale of 1 to 10 is different to how you're feeling, because that how you're feeling is going to get the same neutral response. I'm feeling okay, isn't it? So it's, again, just that question. And I think one I mentioned about moving into action as we go through this year from a MIMHC perspective. And look, mental health first aid training is massive. It's going to be free for signatories. At the moment, it's up to 2 free spaces, free places for signatories at the various workshops and training sessions that we're going to be putting on, and we'll look to extend that up to 4 and 5 for different businesses. But again, I think the survey indicated to us that again, the respondents were looking for competency within that management and supervision. So they could identify when maybe people were struggling, but there was a sensitive approach to get stuff out onto the table. And I think the other thing that came out was the importance of role models. So it's all right having people talking the talk, but having role models and leaders who actually eliminate some of the stuff that causes stress and anxiety. So that immediacy and that delivering that immediacy of need, of thinking that things need to be done straight away, and messaging or calling outside of normal work hours. So 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night, or the weekend. So I think there's much we can do. But just going back to the habits then. So what small habits do you see, Esther, that could make the big difference? So obviously we've got some tapping exercises there, but on that day-to-day basis, again, just what kind of habits do you think that people should try and just embrace and condition themselves so they do become like part of their daily routine?
I think first of all is looking at the diary management, the time management, and putting boundaries in place. So with clients and stuff, so that it can create more time in the working day. And then as I said, the breathing exercises as well. So if they're feeling stressed, learning more about different breathing exercises, what works for them. But the big thing, I suppose, is if people have got more time initially, is doing, getting outside, getting the fresh air, making sure that they're eating properly. So sometimes, when you're really busy, you forget to eat, or you go for the quickest thing because you haven't got time to like make, food and stuff like that. So that's where it can fall down on, and obviously that has a knock-on effect with everything in life. So it's just looking at your lifestyle, again, looking at it on a bird's eye view, right? What are you eating regularly? What are you eating? Are you going for, the sugary foods that aren't really going to help? Have you got time for exercise? If you don't, so it's all like, it's a snowball effect. So it's just looking at those really, and then hopefully that'll have a knock-on effect. Like I said, start small. Don't try and do everything and feel overwhelmed, because you won't do it. Starting small and just giving it some structure, that will help you build those habits, and then building on the habits, like habit stacking, for example. So something that you do now, so like brushing your teeth, or when you sit down on your desk, straight away when you open your laptop, could you do something before you start reading your emails? Could you do a breathing exercise, for example?
And I'm conscious of time, and I want to wrap a few things up. But I know L&C have introduced, Rachel's just indicated that L&C have got a no meeting policy on a Friday. So again, I think there are little things that leadership group and leaders of business can actually do just to soften and improve things during that working week. So I was going to ask about maybe the actions that we think leaders can take, but I think we'll save that for another day, because I want to start wrapping things up. So listen, that's apologies about the little technology mishap in the middle. Thanks to Alison for stepping in and moving us on to the exercises. But as we look to close, and I'll introduce the girls back in a moment, I just want to land probably 3 messages. So first is, look, you're not alone. If you felt stretched, if you felt worn down, if you felt burnt out, you're not alone. Our data shows it's widespread, and the sector is operating double the UK population average when it comes to mental health being poor or of concern. So we've got to fix that, and I'm committed, and I'm up for the challenge. Wellbeing and performance aren't opposites. So look, I mentioned about the importance of KPIs and objectives, and that sales kind of brain that I've actually got, but ultimately they operate in different silos, and you can't deliver performance without being the best version of yourself, and well-being is such a crucial element to that. So they're not linked. Third point is just what you were saying there, Esther. It's just small steps matter. So just taking 1 or 2 little habits, so that they, or 1 or 2 little exercises, so they become habits, is absolutely crucial. So the biggest trap, I think, is as you maybe touched on, that you think you've got to do a massive overhaul. You don't. You just start with one little change, and that's what the next steps are for me. So 3 simple next steps that I'd like people to consider this week. Just take that tapping exercise, take that that positive language, and the positive affirmation, and the tapping, and practice it. So do it daily for the next 7 days. Get it so it becomes a habit. Plan it into your calendar, plan it into your daily routine, and it'll make you feel better. It's just as simple as that. Second thing, you have one honest conversation with a colleague, or your manager. So if you're not feeling great, you've got something you want to get on the table, then have that conversation. Similarly, just be there for others. So if your firm isn't familiar with with MIMHC, then please I'd urge you to get them to become a signatory. It's totally free. There's no catches. Mental health first aid training that I mentioned before is going to be an action, and we're going to get we're committed to get a minimum of 100 mental health first aiders trained as we go through this year, absolutely free, no catches. If I can deliver more, then I'll deliver more. I'm begging and borrowing and looking for donations, so I've got the funding to be able to do it. But if you're not aware of it, your firm's not aware of the charter, then please sign up. If you need support, so if anything's touched a nerve today, then obviously use your in-house routes. So your employee assistance programs, HR, your line managers, whichever is available, then please reach out and use them. If you're not sure where to start, then one thing we've got at MIMHC is a pathway to professionals who can help. So we're not preaching. Sorry, we're not trying to be the leaders and subject matter experts in this space, but we know people who are, and we'll just deliver the connection. So, and I'll finish with just this really. So, well, you're more than your pipeline, you're more than your completion figures. Looking after yourself isn't an indulgence; it's a necessity, right? So, be the best versions of yourself. Look after yourself as you go into this new year, and the ability to serve others starts with being the best version of yourself. So, sleep well, eat well, hydrate, and have some physical movement. But really, really chuffed and delighted to see so many of you on the call today. And look, we've got a lot of work to do, and we've got a lot of challenges in front of us. But I'm up for the challenge. I'm really committed to making a difference, and I'd like to thank Esther and obviously the girls for inviting us into the session today. So that's not bad for me, Gemma and Alice. Finishing pretty much 1:30. I know I should have given you 3 or 4 minutes, but considering I had a bit of a meltdown when my internet went off, I think we've done pretty well there. So thanks for getting us involved today.
It's great.
You, Gemma.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everybody. I just want to close the call by saying thank you obviously to everybody that's presenting. I'm really conscious we've had quite a lot of people on today who perhaps don't know lots about MIMHC or the Working in Mortgages website. So I know we've had a lot of people across. I know a lot of our nationwide guys have joined today. So please go and take a look. If you aren't already following, follow the LinkedIn link as well. And the next session we're actually hosting a face-to-face session in our office actually at Threadneedle Street on the 4th of March. If anyone is interested and would like to attend, then if you can drop a message to the Working in Mortgages mailbox, which this invite came from, and also if anyone's interested in supporting the Lunch and Learns over the next 12 months, if you can drop us a message as well, or got any ideas on content you'd like covered, because there's lots of stuff we've already covered, but there's lots more we can still cover to support everybody. So thanks everyone, and have a great rest of your Monday, and thanks guys again.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks,
Gemma.
Gemma.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.